The steady rhythm of the windshield wipers sliced through the torrential rain as Julian Hayes's BMW M5 sped through Boston's desolate streets. His knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, his grip turning white as he replayed Avery's frantic call in his mind. Julian, the baby. It's coming early. Her voice had cracked with urgency. I'm at Mass General. Everyone from the shower is here. Please hurry. He hadn't bothered changing out of his tailored suit after wrapping up the Morrison case earlier than expected. A case that should have consumed his entire weekend. The timing nagged at him, but he pushed the thought aside as he swerved around a sluggish cab. The digital clock on the dashboard read 2:35 a.m. Julian had spent countless nights handling hospital-related cases and was familiar with graveyard shift patterns. The near-empty parking garage didn't make sense, not with a full baby shower's worth of well-wishers supposedly present. The echo of his Italian leather shoes against the concrete floor as he walked toward the elevator amplified the unease in his gut. 15 years as a defense attorney had sharpened his instincts. Something was off. The maternity ward's reception area was eerily deserted except for a young nurse, who glanced up from her phone as he approached. Her name tag read Chloe. I'm Julian Hayes. My wife, Avery. The nurse's eyes widened in recognition. Mr. Hayes, you'll need to wait. Your brother is already inside with the mother and baby. Julian's stride faltered. My brother? Dr. Hayes? He was on call tonight. Such a fortunate coincidence. Chloe's cheerful demeanor shifted as she registered the hard edge in his expression. I assumed you knew, she added hesitantly. Dominic, his younger brother, the prodigy of the family, had built an impressive surgical career at Mass General, climbing the ranks with the same relentless ambition that defined all Hayes men. Except, Dominic's determination always carried the bitterness of a younger sibling living in his older brother's shadow. Which room? Julian's voice turned to steel, smooth but unyielding, the tone that had brought countless witnesses to their knees in court. Sir, I really can't. Julian's gaze locked onto hers, unflinching and commanding. I'm on the hospital's board of directors, Nurse Chloe. The room number. Now. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed nervously. 302. But they requested not to be disturbed. He was already moving, his steps fueled by instinct and muscle memory, navigating the familiar corridors with precision. A career spent prosecuting corruption had taught him the importance of evidence. His phone was already recording as he approached the partially open door. Avery's voice filtered out, weary but carrying an unmistakable note of satisfaction. We'll tell him about his real dad when he's in college, she said. Until then, we'll raise him with Julian's money. He's making partner next month. The timing couldn't be better. A low male chuckle followed. Dominic, my nephew on paper, he said, but my son in truth. Poetic justice, don't you think? Julian always got everything else. Everything, Avery replied, her voice tinged with amusement, except the Hayes eyes. Look at him, Dominic. Those beautiful green eyes, just like yours. Julian's grip tightened around his phone. The Hayes eyes, those striking emerald green irises, had skipped him entirely, showing up instead in Dominic and their father. A genetic marker he could never pass on to a child. He's perfect, Dominic murmured, his voice filled with reverence. Worth every risk, every secret meeting. Remember that first night in my office, when I brought you dinner during your emergency surgery? Avery's laugh rang out, utterly devoid of guilt. Julian was so proud of himself for marrying such a supportive wife. His pride has always been his weakness. Too busy basking in his own brilliance to notice what was happening right under his nose. Julian's free hand curled into a fist, but his breathing stayed steady, controlled. He had built a career on transforming raw emotion into strategic ammunition, weakness into a weapon. How long can you stay? Avery asked. My shift technically ended an hour ago, Dominic replied smugly. But as department head, no one questions my hours. His tone dripped with self-satisfaction. I've already updated the birth certificate. Just need Julian's signature when he finally shows up. He'll sign without reading it, Avery said confidently. He trusts me to handle all the paperwork. He always has. The great Julian Hayes, outsmarted by his trophy wife and little brother. Dominic's voice hardened. All those years of him looking down on me, treating me like a shadow. Now my son will inherit his fortune. The conversation continued, but Julian had heard enough. His phone kept recording as he silently stepped back into the hallway, his mind already mapping out leverage points and pressure tactics with surgical precision. In the corridor, a young resident passed by, giving him a curious glance. Dr. Lewis, Julian said, recognizing one of Dominic's subordinates. Busy night? Quieter than usual. Actually, Lewis replied. Just that one delivery in 2147. He hesitated, then added, though it was odd, Dr. Hayes insisted on handling it personally, even though Dr. Martinez was the attending on call. Said something about it being a VIP patient. Lewis shrugged. Above my pay grade, I guess. Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed. Tell me, Dr. Lewis, how long have you been hoping to transfer to Mass General's cardiac unit? The resident blinked at the unexpected question. Since I started my residency, but the waiting list. Send me your CV tomorrow, Julian interrupted smoothly. The board is always interested in sharp young doctors who understand the importance of proper documentation. Understanding dawned in Lewis's expression, and he nodded slowly. I keep very detailed records, Mr. Hayes, including any unusual changes to standard protocols or attending assignments. Excellent. Have those records ready as well. Julian handed him a business card. My direct line. And, Doctor, this conversation never happened. The drive home was a blur of rain and calculation. Julian's mind raced through options, categorizing and dismissing strategies with ruthless efficiency. The recording in his pocket felt heavy, a nuclear option, but far from his only weapon. Once home, he retreated to his office. Sitting at his desk, he accessed his private server. Years of handling high-profile cases had taught him the value of comprehensive surveillance. Every email, every text message Avery had sent through accounts he paid for was automatically backed up, a precaution meant to guard against corporate espionage. How fitting that this insurance would prove invaluable in a betrayal far closer to home. As dawn broke, Julian allowed himself a fleeting moment to absorb the weight of the night's revelations. But where others might have succumbed to grief or rage, he felt only cold, sharp clarity. They had played their game, assuming him a fool. Now they would learn why Boston's criminal elite feared the name Hayes. His phone buzzed. Avery's voice, perfectly composed and concerned, came through the line. Where are you? We've been so worried. The baby came so fast. Traffic, Julian replied smoothly. Terrible accident on the expressway. But I'm on my way now, darling. His tone hardened ever so slightly. After all, I wouldn't want to miss this for the world. Ending the call, he turned back to his computer. On the screen, hundreds of archived messages between Avery and Dominic painted a damning picture of calculated deception spanning years. Each message was another bullet in the arsenal he was meticulously assembling. They had thought they'd orchestrated the perfect betrayal. Soon, they would realize just how wrong they were. The first rays of sunrise cast his office in shades of deep crimson as Julian began crafting his counterstrike. Across town, his wife and brother cradled their newborn son, basking in the glow of their perceived victory. Let them savor it, he thought. Soon, they would understand the true meaning of poetic justice. The end of Act I approached, but for Julian, this was only the opening gambit in a game he had every intention of winning. He hadn't become Boston's most feared attorney by showing mercy to those who betrayed him. Dawn broke over the city as he straightened his tie, checked the recording one last time, and prepared to meet his newborn son. The mask of the proud father was firmly in place, hiding the executioner beneath. The game had begun, and Julian Hayes never lost when the stakes mattered. The rhythmic ticking of his Patek Philippe filled the quiet of his parked BMW as the sun's first light crept into Mass General's parking garage. His hand gripped the phone containing the recording that had shattered his world just hours earlier. Unlike the cold metal of the device, Julian's mind burned with calculated fury. My nephew on paper, my son in truth, Dominic's smug voice echoed in the recording. Julian played it one last time, every word crystallizing into a weapon. His fingers flew across the screen as he composed a message to Dr. Martinez, the attending physician who should have handled Avery's delivery. The same physician mysteriously replaced by Dominic. Dr. Martinez, concerning tonight's irregularities in the maternity ward rotation, years of legal training guided him as he documented the first strands of what would become an intricate web. A text from Avery interrupted him. Where are you? The nurse said you were here earlier. Julian allowed himself a thin smile and ignored the message. Let them stew in uncertainty. He had more pressing priorities. Opening his laptop, he logged into the hospital's administrative portal, a system he knew intimately as a board member. His search results painted a damning picture. Dominic's badge had accessed his office hundreds of times during off hours over the past year, perfectly aligning with nights Avery had brought him dinner during supposed emergencies. Getting sloppy, little brother, Julian muttered, downloading the security logs. So confident in your secret that you forgot about the digital trail. His next stop was the hospital's security footage archive. One call to the head of security, framed as a potential liability concern, granted him immediate access. Mr. Hayes, it's unusual to access archives this early, the security chief remarked. Just being thorough, Jim. You know how these insurance companies are about documentation, Julian replied with the perfect blend of authority and casual familiarity, especially with high-risk deliveries. The footage revealed more than he could have hoped for. Countless late-night visits by Avery to Dominic's office, hours spent behind closed doors, and their carefully staggered exits, thinking themselves clever. The supposedly coincidental meetings in the hospital cafeteria only added to the damning narrative. But it was the baby shower footage that truly stoked Julian's fury. He watched as Avery and Dominic orchestrated a fake emergency that conveniently rescheduled the event to coincide with his early case settlement. Code blue in maternity, Dominic's voice rang out on the footage, triggering panic among the shower guests. Yet, hours of security footage revealed no actual emergency that night. Julian's phone buzzed again, a text from Avery. Honey, please come meet your son. He has the most beautiful green eyes. The mention of green eyes jolted Julian's memory. Pulling up Avery's prenatal health records, he located her signed insurance forms, which listed him as the father, dated months after she had undoubtedly learned the truth. Insurance fraud, Julian muttered, forwarding copies of the forms to his secure server. Amateur move, darling. His next call was to the hospital's compliance office. This is Ramon Hayes. I need all visitor logs and after-hours access records for Dr. Dominic Hayes' office for the past 18 months. Yes, it's urgent, a board matter. The compliance officer's tone shifted immediately. Sir, there are irregularities in those logs. Dr. Hayes hasn't been following visitor documentation protocols. Document everything, Julian instructed. Every violation, every mislog, every unauthorized access. I want a full report by noon. Next, he turned to the financial trail. Logging into their joint accounts Julian had carefully structured when they married. He combed through Avery's spending history. The pattern was unmistakable. Charges at upscale restaurants near the hospital on nights she claimed to be bringing Dominic dinner, hotel stays disguised as medical conferences. Every transaction painted a vivid portrait of betrayal. But the masterstroke came when Julian accessed their cloud storage, the backup system he had insisted on for family security. Every text, every email, every photo Avery had sent through the accounts he paid for was archived. The messages between Avery and Dominic spanned years. He doesn't suspect a thing. Too busy chasing partner to notice, Avery had written 6 months ago. Once he makes partner, we'll have everything we need. His money, his reputation, and our son. Dominic had replied 3 months ago. The green eyes sealed it. No way to explain those away. Avery had messaged just last week. Julian downloaded everything, methodically organizing the evidence into categories: professional misconduct, insurance fraud, misuse of hospital resources. Each category was a loaded gun aimed at their carefully orchestrated future. An email notification drew his attention, the compliance officer's preliminary report. Over the past year alone, Dominic had violated visitor documentation policies more than 300 times, each violation carrying potential sanctions. Julian's phone buzzed again, this time a message from his brother. Where are you? Avery's worried. Don't you want to meet your son? The audacity only fueled Julian's resolve. He began drafting emails to key hospital board members, attaching select security footage. Another set of emails documented Dominic's pattern of protocol violations for the medical board. But Julian wasn't finished. Accessing Avery's law firm's internal portal, a privilege she had granted him months ago to help with her career, he uncovered every instance where she had misused firm resources during her hospital visits. Each billable hour misreported to cover her absences was another nail in the coffin of her professional reputation. Piece by piece, the web tightened. The sun was fully up when Julian finally allowed himself a moment of reflection. His inbox was already flooding with responses, dozens of emails from hospital board members and administrators, each one filled with shock, requests for meetings, and demands for explanations. He composed a new text to Avery. Traffic's finally clearing. On my way to meet our son. Let them savor their imagined victory a little longer. By the time he walked into that hospital room, their world would already be crumbling. As his phone rang, Julian answered to hear the medical board's chief administrator. Mr. Hayes, we've received some disturbing documentation regarding Dr. Dominic Hayes. I'm glad you called, Julian replied smoothly. I've been compiling evidence of systematic misconduct. Would you like to meet? The administrator's tone turned grave. If possible, these allegations, the unauthorized access alone, I'll have my office send everything we have, including the delivery room recording from last night, Julian interrupted. A sharp intake of breath. Recording? Yes, Julian replied, his voice tinged with steel. My brother and his patient were quite candid about their relationship and their plans. The call ended with promises of emergency board meetings and swift action. Before heading back to the hospital, Julian made one more stop, his bank. I need to freeze all joint accounts, he informed the manager. And I'm exercising power of attorney over my wife's separate accounts. Suspected fraud. The bank manager, who had handled Julian's accounts for years, didn't hesitate. Of course, Mr. Hayes. Will you need documentation for legal proceedings? Everything, Julian replied. And contact the insurance company. They'll be interested in some fraudulent claims. Back in his car, Julian reviewed his morning's work. The hospital board was in disarray. The medical board had launched an investigation. Dominic's career was hanging by a thread, and Avery's carefully constructed financial safety net was evaporating. His phone chimed with an alert. The first hospital-wide emails regarding Dominic's investigation were being sent out, right on schedule. Another text from Avery popped up. Julian, please hurry. Dominic had to leave for another surgery. I don't want to be alone. Julian allowed himself a cold smile as he started the car. Alone? She had no idea how alone she was about to be. The hospital loomed ahead as Julian approached, his expression carved from stone. Behind him, digital warheads detonated across servers and inboxes throughout Boston's medical community. By the time he stepped into that delivery room, the once mighty Dr. Dominic Hayes would be facing suspension, Avery's law firm would be questioning her integrity, and their carefully orchestrated future would be unraveling in real time. They thought they had executed the perfect betrayal. Instead, they had handed Julian all the ammunition he needed to destroy them. The game wasn't ending the way they had planned, not by a long shot. As Julian parked his car, straightened his tie, and prepared to enter the hospital one final time, he wasn't just the deceived husband. He was the architect of their downfall. They wanted his money. They wanted his name. They were about to learn the true cost of both. Julian's footsteps echoed through the maternity ward corridor, each step deliberate and measured. The morning shift had begun, nurses and doctors bustling past him with sideways glances. News traveled fast in hospitals. Internal messaging systems amplified the chaos, each notification spreading the fallout like wildfire. Dominic's phone chimed incessantly as Julian approached room 2147. Through the door's small window, Julian observed his brother frantically scrolling through emails, the color draining from his face. This can't be happening, Dominic muttered, his fingers trembling over his phone screen. Who could have? The door swung open. Congratulations, Julian announced, his voice sharp and precise, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. The video of your little confession has gone viral. The board is particularly interested in those unauthorized after-hours visits. Avery bolted upright in her hospital bed, snatching her phone, her face twisted with panic as notifications flooded her screen. What have you done? She demanded. Done? Julian's smile was cold and calculated, never touching his eyes. I merely shared some compelling security footage. Your law firm seems especially intrigued. They've been tagged in quite a few posts. Dominic stood, attempting to mask his growing panic with his usual arrogance. You're bluffing. There's no proof of anything. Julian pulled out his phone, scrolling through a series of documents. 37 unauthorized access logs to your office over the past year. Interesting timing, too, always coinciding with Avery's emergency dinner deliveries. Those were legitimate medical consultations. Dominic sputtered. Really? The hotel receipts tell a different story. And let's not forget your text messages about timing the birth to coincide with my partnership announcement. Avery's phone rang. The name of her firm's managing partner lit up the screen. Her hands shook as she declined the call. Julian, we can explain, she stammered. Explain the insurance fraud? Julian turned his phone toward her. These prenatal forms listing me as the father are going to be very interesting to investigators, especially given your documented knowledge of the real paternity. The baby stirred in his bassinet, drawing Dominic's gaze. Julian noted the instinctive way his brother moved toward the child. Another piece of evidence for the medical board, Julian said coolly. You're destroying everything over wounded pride. Dominic spat. Pride? Julian let out a cold, humorless laugh. You plotted to steal my money, my name, and my reputation. Now, you'll lose yours instead. Avery's phone buzzed again. Another call from her firm. Her face was pale as she declined it. Please, Julian, think about the baby, your son. Julian's voice turned sharp. Don't worry. The paternity test I demanded will ensure he gets his real father's name. Though Dominic's upcoming unemployment might complicate child support. Dominic lunged forward, his face a mask of fury, but Julian didn't flinch. Touch me, Julian warned, and assault charges will be the least of your worries. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Dr. Hayes, the chief of surgery needs to see you immediately. Dominic's shoulders slumped as reality set in. This will ruin my practice, my reputation, he whispered. You should have thought of that before using hospital resources for your affair, Julian replied, straightening his tie. The board is particularly interested in how you manipulated schedules to deliver your own child. Quite the ethical breach. Avery's phone vibrated with a text message. Emergency meeting. 9 a.m. attendance mandatory. You'll never work in Boston again, she hissed. Actually, I made partner this morning, Julian replied, his smile razor-sharp. The firm was impressed with how I handled this case. They're adding medical malpractice to my portfolio. The next few weeks unfolded precisely as Julian had orchestrated. Dominic's surgical privileges were suspended pending investigation, and his wealthy private practice clients abandoned him at the first hint of scandal. At the hospital board's hearing, Julian sat in the back, silently observing his brother's futile attempts to justify years of ethical violations. Love justified the risks, Dominic argued, his usually confident voice cracking. The board chairman's response was ice-cold. Love justifies violating patient care protocols? Falsifying medical records? Misusing hospital resources for personal affairs? Avery's downfall was equally swift. Updates poured in from Julian's former colleagues. She's been terminated, his friend Elliot reported over lunch. The insurance fraud alone sealed her fate, and she burned through her billable targets months ago. 5 years later, Julian Hayes stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor of Boston's most prestigious law firm, gazing at the commanding view of the city he now ruled. The morning sun gleamed off his nameplate. Julian Hayes, Senior Managing Partner, Medical Malpractice Division. His phone buzzed with a familiar notification, his quarterly update from the private investigator he still kept on retainer. He opened the report, scanning the details with measured satisfaction. Subject: D. Hayes, formerly Dr. Dominic Hayes. Employment: Cedar Ridge Health Center, Pine Coast. Annual salary: $85,000, down from $875,000 at Mass General. Recent activity: application for a position at Cascade Regional Medical Center denied due to ongoing medical board restrictions. Subject: A. Carter, formerly Avery Carter. Employment: paralegal at Lee & Associates, New Hampshire. Salary: $42,000. Certification: failed paralegal certification exam for the third time. Child support petition: denied due to subject Hayes's limited income. Child: age 5, enrolled in a local public school in Pine Coast. Distinctive green eyes noted. No contact with maternal or paternal extended family. Julian archived the report, his lips curving into a satisfied smile. These updates weren't fueled by lingering emotion, but by a businessman's need to ensure his investments had delivered their returns. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Martinez is here to discuss the Morrison case, his assistant, Lila, announced. Send her in, Julian replied, straightening his tie. Dr. Chloe Martinez, now the chief of obstetrics at Mass General, entered with a confident stride, a stark contrast to the tentative demeanor she had displayed 5 years earlier when she had testified against Dominic during the medical board hearings. The board received another appeal from your brother, Chloe began, settling into a chair. Same argument. He claims his suspension should be lifted because he's served his time. Julian raised an eyebrow. Their response? Chloe allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Denied. Again. Julian nodded, leaning back in his chair. Justice had been served, and the results spoke for themselves. Somewhere in rural Pine Coast, his brother's life remained a pale shadow of what it once was, and Avery's struggles mirrored that decline. Their secrets, once carefully guarded, had been their undoing. For Julian, the past was a settled matter, the final chapter written. He turned his attention to the task at hand as Chloe outlined the details of the Morrison case. The game was over, and he had won. His conduct violated every ethical standard we uphold. Using hospital resources for an affair, delivering his own child, falsifying records. The board considers him a permanent liability. He's lucky to still have a license at all, even a restricted one, Chloe said, pulling out her tablet. She added with a smirk, speaking of restrictions, you'll enjoy this. Remember that nurse who tried to block you that night? She's now head of maternal care protocols. Completely rewrote the visitor documentation system. Julian nodded in approval. Professional competence always impressed him, even when it had once been wielded against him. His phone lit up with another message, this time from Elliot, an old friend at Avery's former law firm. Thought you'd want to know. She applied for an associate position here using her maiden name. Probably thought we wouldn't connect the dots. Should have done better research. I'm on the hiring committee now. Julian's reply was succinct. Standards must be maintained. A knock at his door revealed Lila. Sorry to interrupt, but you have that charity board meeting at 11. The Children's Hospital Wing dedication. Julian nodded. The Hayes Family Pediatric Care Center. His father's legacy deserved far better than Dominic's disgrace. After Chloe left, Julian allowed himself a moment of reflection. The Hayes name, once sullied by his brother's actions, had been salvaged and redirected. Now it was associated with Julian's professional success and philanthropic efforts, rather than Dominic's scandals. His laptop chimed with an email from his realtor. Property update. Hayes's Pine Coast residence remains underwater. Third refinancing attempt denied. Property taxes 3 months overdue. Julian smirked. Dominic's financial decline had been especially satisfying to watch. His brother, who had once sneered at Julian's careful money management in favor of living on credit and reputation, now had neither. A news alert caught Julian's attention. Cedar Ridge Health Center faces budget cuts amid rural healthcare crisis. The accompanying photo showed Dominic in wrinkled scrubs, looking a decade older than his 40 years, treating minor injuries and writing prescriptions for the common cold. Gone were the complex surgeries, the wealthy private patients, and the prestige. The surgeon who had once looked down on his mere lawyer brother had fallen far. Another email arrived, this one from Julian's contact at the New Hampshire Bar Association. Carter's 4th attempt at paralegal certification is scheduled for next month. Previous failures noted. Application supervisor reports ongoing issues with attention to detail and documentation procedures. The irony wasn't lost on Julian. Avery, who had once mocked his obsession with meticulous documentation, now couldn't master basic legal filing. Photos from his investigators showed her living in a small apartment above a diner, driving a 10-year-old Honda, and shopping at discount stores. The designer wardrobe and luxury lifestyle she had once envisioned maintaining with his money were distant memories. Lila's voice interrupted again. Your ex-sister-in-law is on the line. Says it's about the family trust. 2 years ago, Julian's mother had revised the Hayes family trust, removing both Dominic and his child from the inheritance. Avery's periodic attempts to challenge this had become almost amusing. Take a message, Julian said, turning back to his view of the city. He thought briefly about another detail from the investigator's report. Dominic's son, now in kindergarten, was beginning to struggle with questions about his family. His father's strained monthly visits served as a constant reminder of his fallen status, and Avery's attempts to maintain appearances fooled no one in their small town, where everyone knew their story. Justice had been served, and Julian, standing at the pinnacle of his career, had ensured the Hayes name would be associated with dignity and success, not disgrace. The boy's green eyes, once flaunted as proof of paternity, now served as a constant reminder of betrayal. The distinctive Hayes family trait, which had skipped Julian, had become a mark of shame rather than pride. Julian's desk phone lit up with a familiar number, his father. Without preamble, the elder Hayes spoke. The hospital board meeting went well. They've officially renamed the surgical wing. Your brother's name has been removed from all historical records. He made his choice, Julian replied evenly. Yes. A pause. Your mother saw him at the grocery store when she visited her sister in Pine Coast. Says he looked diminished. Choices have consequences. Indeed. Another pause. The boy. Your mother worries. The trust will provide for his education. Anonymously, Julian conceded, through the family foundation, but he'll never carry the Hayes name. His father's approval came through clearly. The family legacy would remain untarnished. A calendar alert interrupted the conversation, reminding Julian of his lunch appointment, another merger discussion with a prominent medical malpractice firm. His reputation for handling delicate cases had skyrocketed, bolstered by the precision and ruthlessness he had demonstrated during his divorce proceedings. Lila appeared at his door once more. Your brother left a voicemail. Says it's about your mother's birthday next month. Delete it, Julian instructed, turning his attention back to his view of Boston's medical district. The iconic towers of Mass General rose against the sky, a testament to the city's legacy of excellence. And send in the merger paperwork. 5 years had reshaped all the players in ways none could have anticipated. Julian's calculated revenge had elevated him to professional prominence while ensuring that his betrayers faced daily reminders of their choices. Dominic, once the golden child of Boston medicine, now treated minor injuries and wrote prescriptions for colds in rural Pine Coast. His grand plans to inherit the Hayes legacy lay in ruins, as empty as his bank accounts. Avery, who had schemed to live in luxury on Julian's money, now struggled to maintain even basic certification in a field she had once dismissed. Her social media, once filled with posts about charity galas and luxury vacations, now showcased grocery store sales and secondhand furniture. Their son, meant to be their crowning achievement, had instead become a symbol of their downfall. His green eyes no longer marked a triumph, but stood as a daily reminder of betrayal, a child growing up under the shadow of his parents' disgrace. Julian's phone buzzed again, this time with an update from Pine Coast. Subject: D. Hayes observed leaving the hospital after shift. Overheard telling a colleague, "I had it all. The Hayes name, the perfect career, the perfect life. One mistake." But it hadn't been one mistake. It had been years of calculated deception, arrogance, and underestimation. They had thought Julian a fool to be manipulated. Instead, he had become the architect of their downfall. As the morning sun caught his reflection in the office window, Julian allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Successful, respected, and unbowed, he stood at the pinnacle of Boston's legal and philanthropic circles. Below him, the city's medical community hummed with activity, its prominent players acutely aware of his influence. The Hayes name endured, but now it was spoken with a mix of respect and fear rather than simple admiration. Evidence didn't lie, though people did, and some lies carried consequences that lingered for a lifetime. Julian turned back to his desk, filing the past away as neatly as the quarterly reports that documented his triumph. There were cases to win, empires to build, and a legacy to preserve. After all, justice served cold was still justice, and the Hayes name would be remembered for delivering it. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.